Gassing is the most humane way to cull badgers, the Princess Royal has said. Princess Anne, who has lost 15 of her rare-bred cattle to bovine terobites in the past 2 years, was speaking to BBC One's Country File program at her Gatcombe Park estate. Her comments come after the government said it would not expand badger culling from 2 pilot culls aimed at reducing terobites in cattle. DEFRA said initial investigations into the use of gas were taking place. Continue reading the main story. A circumflex start quote. It is not possible to say at this very early stage if or when gassing is likely to be a realistic or humane method of culling. DEFRA. The interview with Princess Anne at her Gloucestershire home was described by Countryfile as a frank and wide-ranging look at issues affecting the British countryside. DEFRA, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, had originally planned to introduce up to 10 new cull areas in southwest England every year. But its own independent assessment showed that culls in 2 pilot areas had not been effective and raised questions about their humanness. The pilot culls had involved contracted marksmen shooting the animals at night. Princess Anne also discussed her views on horses, saying there were too many in Britain. Princess Anne, who has run Gatcombe Park for nearly 40 years, owns a herd of white bark cattle. In the past 2 years, 15 have been lost to terobites, including 2 prize bulls. She said of gassing, "Most of the people who did it in the past will tell you that gas is the much nicer way of doing it, if that's not a silly expression, because of the way it works. And how it works is that you go to sleep, basically." Outspoken views. A senior member of the National Farmers Union, NFU, said farmers would welcome Princess Anne's comments. Andrew Guest, NFU County Chairman for Gloucestershire, told BBC Radio 4's World at 1. The Princess Royal is noted for outspoken views and her forthright honesty. Continue reading the main story. A circumflex start quote. Princess Anne is a working farmer who is also patron of nearly 50 countryside organisations. As such, she is a unique perspective on Britain's current rural agenda. Bill Lyons, executive editor of Countryfile. "I think it's an option that needs looking at, and provided we can tick all the boxes as far as humanness goes, then it would certainly be an option to consider." Gassing badgers has been tried before. Professor Rosie Woodruff of the Zoological Society for London said when gassing with cyanide was used in the 1970s it did not work, leading to the practice being banned in 1982. She told BBC Radio 4's Today programme, "If you go back to reports at the time, they are full of frustration about how it just wasn't very effective. It was difficult to achieve lethal concentrations of gas due to the way badger sets are constructed, and sublethal concentrations were inhumane," Professor Woodruff said. "It is tempting to think it might be easier to kill badgers when they are basically a sitting target underground, but it turned out from reports in the 70s that it is just not that straightforward." White bark cattle. Umchurk Estate white bark cattle. Princess Anne keeps a herd of the rare breed on her estate but has lost 15 to bovine terobites. The RSPCA said it was strongly opposed to the use of gas to control the badger population. Its head of public affairs David Bowles said, "Killing badgers will not solve the problem of bovine terobites in cattle, whatever the method of culling. The government would have to undertake field trials of gassing before any decision is made, and this is unlikely to occur. The possible gassing of badgers adds a further outrageous twist to this misguided badger cull policy." Buffer zone. Environment Secretary Owen Patterson has proposed a program of vaccination around the edges of the most badly affected parts of the country. This would create a buffer zone of immunity that would stop terobites from spreading, he said. In a statement on Friday, DEFRA said, "Initial investigations into the use of gas as a potential culling method are taking place as set out in the 25-year strategy to free England of bovine terobites, which includes plans for more sophisticated terobites testing, developing cattle and oral badger vaccines, tighter cattle movement controls, badger vaccination in the buffer zone and badger culling in areas where disease is widespread. It is not possible to say at this very early stage if or when gassing is likely to be a realistic or humane method of culling. Meat trade. Discussing horses, Princess Anne said there are too many in Britain, thousands of which are neglected. An awful lot of the abandonments are because they don't perceive there to be any value in the animals, she told Country Files Tom Heap. So, chuck them out, they'll survive or they'll die. But the meat trade adds value to the animal, so there is some point in keeping it healthy if it's got an endpoint that it can go to. Asked if she had eaten horse herself, the princess replied, "Oh, certainly." She added that it was very good, actually. Bill Lyons, executive editor of Country File, said of the interview, to be broadcast this weekend, Princess Anne is a working farmer who is also patron of nearly 50 countryside organizations. As such, she is a unique perspective on Britain's current rural agenda. Country File will explore her views in a frank and wide-ranging interview which I am sure will offer our viewers some very surprising insights.